How's it going, everyone? My name is Miles and this is the Make with Miles channel, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make some super simple modern side tables in two completely different styles. Let's go! For the first side table, I wanted it to be more of a mid-century modern style using all hardwood, so I started by cutting to size a piece of elm which had been sitting around in the shop for a while. After cleaning up both edges on the table saw, it was now time to cut out the templates. I created this design in Adobe Illustrator and then I just printed them out full scale. If you want to try making this project for yourself, there's a link in the description to where you can purchase my plans. I included two variations on the design, both in PDF form as well as the SVG files, in case you want to cut this out on a CNC. After I had affixed all the templates to the wood, I was able to cut out the general shape on the bandsaw. Now that I had the general shape of all the parts, I realized that I could use the track saw to cut up right against the line of the template. If you don't have access to a track saw, you could do this just as easily with a tapering jig on the table saw or by sanding right up to the line instead. The next thing I had to do was cut to size both ends of the leg pieces. For this, I'll just be using my crosscut sled set to the same angle as the line of the template. I just eyeballed the angle, which is totally fine as long as all four legs are cut at the same setting of the sled. Before cutting, I made sure to transfer the cut line to the side of the leg so it could easily be lined up with the edge of the sled. Now that all the leg pieces were done, I could use the track saw again to get a straight edge on the top arch of the leg assembly. After sanding the curved edges right up to the line, it was time to cut the half lap joint where the two leg assemblies will slot together. The area that needs to be cut out is included on the template, assuming that you're using a 3/4 inch material. This can easily be modified if you're using thicker or thinner material. I ended up cutting the opposing half lap joint on the bandsaw, mainly because I would have had to raise the table saw blade too high for the clearance of my sled. After that, I drilled the holes on the underside where the top would be screwed to the legs. For this first tool, I was able to borrow a friend's domino jointer to join all the leg pieces together. Don't worry if you don't have access to a domino jointer, I will be showing a simpler way to attach the legs on the second side table later in the video. This was my first time using a domino jointer, and now I realize why so many people like to use it. It just makes the process of joining two pieces of wood together much easier and simpler. After the glue dried, it was time to start shaping the legs. In my initial vision for the first side table, I wanted the legs to be contoured with no hard edges. First, I started by rounding over the outer edges with my largest roundover bit. Next, I drew a center reference line on the inside edges, which would help me taper the legs. I thought this would be a great opportunity to try out some power carving with my angle grinder. If you watched any of my videos where I use recycled skateboards, you know that I use a metal abrasive carving disc to remove the paint and graphics. And this worked alright for shaping the legs, but I think something with a rougher grit might work better. After doing a fair bit of sanding, it was time to apply the finish. I want to give a big thanks to Totalboat for sending me some of their Halcyon clear varnish to use on my projects. I thought this would be a great opportunity to try it out for the first time. I really did enjoy using the Halcyon finish, mainly because it's super easy to apply, and I ended up with a very durable coat which also filled the open grain of the elm very nicely. Because elm is more porous and has an open grain, I did end up having to apply around 3 coats of varnish, but I'm super happy with the result. While the legs were drying, I started work on the top. For the top, I wanted to create a sort of woven pattern using multiple species of wood. I started by using some blue tape and Starbond CA glue to temporarily attach a piece of gnarl wood to an offcut of elm. I then sketched a general line where I wanted it to be cut. After cutting the curved line, I removed the offcuts, and what we're left with are 2 pieces of wood that fit perfectly together. I repeated this process a few times until I had a design that I was happy with. Now that I had all the pieces cut, I started the glue up. In between the main pieces of wood, I'm laminating a thin strip of walnut which is the same thickness as the kerf of the bandsaw blade. By adding this thin strip of wood, it makes sure that the pieces nest perfectly together with no gaps. I decided that I wanted a few more walnut strips to add to the woven lamination look, so I took it to the bandsaw again and started cutting some more curved lines. After letting the glue dry, I removed the excess wood with a chisel and ran it through the planer. After cutting out the general shape on the bandsaw, I made a quick circle jig for my router using some small pieces of masonite. I then used my largest chamfer bit for the bottom edge and then tapered it off so there are no sharp edges using my orbital sander. I did this because I wanted it to match the rounded edge profile of the legs. I ended up adding some hardwood dowels as accents, mainly to conceal the area where the screw had been from the circle jig. Again, it was time to apply some finish. I think the Halcyon varnish really brought out the color of the wood nicely. Now that the first version of the side table is done, let's jump into how I made the second one. Since you've already seen me cut out one set of legs, we're going to skip that process for the second build. For the second style, I modified the design so these top edges are straight and more angular rather than curved like the last version. To join these legs together, I'm going to be using splines, which are a great alternative to using a domino jointer. After cutting the dados on the leg pieces, I cut out some small pieces of walnut which are the same thickness as the dado. It's very important that the grain direction of the splines are going perpendicular to the dado, otherwise the joint will be very weak and have a higher chance of cracking. After using a flush trim bit to cut off the excess wood of the splines, I masked off the plywood edges and added a few coats of brush-on primer. I was finally able to paint the legs using some orange spray paint. After painting the top with a complementary shade of blue, it was time to assemble both the side tables. After screwing the tops to both of the side tables, this build was complete. Overall, I'm super stoked with how these side tables came out. This one was a pretty quick project for me, and it would have been even faster had I not been filming. One quick thing I wanted to note, if you end up making this project with the intention of using it as a stool, I would highly recommend making the leg pieces out of one solid piece of wood instead of the way I did it with 3. I did end up sitting on the side tables as a test, and everything held up just fine. But just to be safe, I would make the legs out of one solid piece of wood instead. I've had a few people recently ask me if I have any merch, and it's finally up, so if you want a Make with Miles t-shirt or sweatshirt, there's a link in the description. If you want to support what I do, I would really appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button, as well as the like button if you enjoyed the video. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.